It's the Fulhamish podcast, your independent voice of Fulham FC. My name's Sammy James. Welcome to the show. Today, it's going to be a fun one. Spurs 1, Fulham 2. All the reaction to a brilliant evening in North London as 2 goals inside 6 minutes, including that stunner from Harry Wilson, set us on our way. 200 games for Marco Silva. What a way to mark it. And I'm joined on the podcast today by Jack Stroudley. Hello.
Hi Sammy, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Elizabeth Barnard, hello.
Hi Sammy, thanks for having me.
And making his debut on the pod, Oscar O'Kane, hello.
Hi Sammy, hi. Great to be here, delighted to be making my debut and coinciding with the away win. So off to a good start.
Yeah, exactly. Hope the luck every time you come on the podcast keeps rolling in. Before we get into the match, Elizabeth, your favourite 3-word reviews from the game as per usual.
Yeah, some crackers, especially after a win. I think people are very creative and in a celebratory mood. Maybe had a few celebratory pints. I'll start with, this is Jack and Laws, but via Rick Cardis. Cockcrows chewing cud, which I loved. Random Fulham stuff with quite a sassy one for Spurs. Kudos for trying, which I thought was really, really good.
Nice.
Average Jack with 6-minute miracle. Definitely how it felt at the beginning of the game. And then obviously a very momentous occasion for Silva. So I've gone for Richard Bamber's Silva's 200 stunner.
Yeah, it really was a fantastic way to mark that occasion for Marco. Sign the contract. Just sign the contract, please, Marco. That's all you need to do. Elizabeth, you and I were together in North London. Anyone who knows you knows that it is your favourite away day of the season. You go on a lot about how Spurs away is the one in the calendar that you look out for. And, well, could it get much better than that? It was a brilliant evening all round, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I always have Spurs away circled in my calendar. I love it. I think it's such a fun away day. Obviously, like a little bit out of the way, but not too difficult. Always really packed in the Fulham end. And it is just like, I hate to say it, but it is just a great place to watch football. So all of that combined. And yeah, just an incredible game. And I think when it was 7 minutes in and we were already 2-0 up, I genuinely was pinching myself being like, how is this real? And we'll come on to the performances, especially in that first half. But oh my goodness, it felt like we saw a different Fulham, a Fulham that we've been crying out for this season last night.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love the stat from Opta. It's the fastest that Spurs have ever been at 2-0 down in a home game in the Premier League. That's just how ridiculous a situation it was, Oscar, to be 2 up. To be 1 up after 4 minutes felt like magic. And then I think Dan said it on our quick take. He was just like, almost not even recovered from scoring. We were all still kind of celebrating the first, and then suddenly it's 2 and you're just like, no way, this cannot be happening. I mean, I think some of us expected it to be, Spurs were clearly out of form. It was a good time for us to play them, but to be 2-0 up in 6 minutes is just ludicrous.
Honestly, I couldn't agree more. It was that moment of sort of Tete scores, and I hadn't really quite settled down until Wilson obviously made it 2-0. But it was a moment of madness from Vicario. I always do the thing, you watch the whole game, and then I kind of like looking at the highlights afterwards as well, just to remind myself how well we played. But we were absolutely electric. Our start was, I think it's the best start that we've made in any of the games that we've played this season. And a wonderful finish from Harry Wilson. And also, I think a nice touch to say that Josh King grabbing an assist as well. I thought he was brilliant in the opening part. But I just couldn't quite believe it, and especially at a ground where we have not had great luck at. Obviously, it's the last time we won there was when the former Spurs man Dimitar Berbatov grabbed the goal in a 1-0 win in 2013. So brilliant to get one over Thomas Frank as well, and delighted for Silva, especially in his 200th game in charge.
Yeah, Jack, Chukwueze came in on the left wing. That was the one change from Sunderland, which is kind of what some of us expected, considering his brilliant cameo in that game. And it was him that opened up the first goal. I hadn't realised until I watched it back on the replay how Bergvall got so weirdly wrong-footed by his pass to Tete. It's one of those that, obviously we get a bit of luck with that first goal, but we also made our own luck by being so positive, and particularly Chukwueze. He just got rewarded for keeping going effectively. And yeah, I don't know if that goal goes in without the doggy deflection, but we made our own luck by being so positive in that first few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. We came out the gates flying, rightfully so in terms of being 1-0 up as early as we were. We were fantastic in those opening exchanges. And yeah, Chukwueze does really well and, warrants the start that everyone thinks he deserves, the ability to kind of, jink with the ball and hold and delay that pass for as long as possible, waiting for, oncoming runners. And, he said the ball, wrong foot's Bergvall. And then I think, to be fair, Kenny Tete, who I'm sure his performance will potentially get onto a little bit later, but I think he deserves a lot of credit for the finish, actually. A lot of fullbacks probably fluff that chance, but he keeps his composure, drives it low, hard into the corner. That's the aim anyway. Yes, it takes the flick in terms of a deflection, but it's a great goal all round, and yeah, it's a great way to start the game.
Yeah. We've got to talk about the second, though. The second is the goal that I've watched it back so many times today, Elizabeth. I still can't get my head around it. You and I didn't have the best vantage point of the goal because there was, I don't want to call them out on the podcast, but there was two guys that thought we were sitting in their seats and we weren't. And at the moment they were like, is this seat 269? And I was just there like, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure we're in the right place. We were. It was at the moment where Harry Wilson I could tell that there was commotion because everyone was screaming at Josh King to shoot. And then all of a sudden I just look up and I just see this ball loop from somehow. It felt unbelievable. It was disbelief, the fact that this ball just was sailing in from the touchline, and I was looking for an offside flag or a foul or something because you just could scarcely believe that somehow Harry Wilson had scored it as if he was like trying to get a conversion from the touchline. It was just the weirdest goal ever.
Yeah, it was like I was sustaining an injury celebrating the first goal, and then I blinked and then we'd scored a second. And I think in the ground at the time, there was just no way that we could appreciate what a good finish it was, even though our vantage point was less than ideal at that moment. But like the perspective from the away end, especially at Spurs, you are quite low down. You can't actually see how far away Harry Wilson really is from the goal and how much, even though the goal is open, it has to be sort of almost on a plate in terms of the direction and the accuracy of the pass, the shot. And yeah, huge credit to Josh King to having the eye to pass it, get it back to Wilson. Those two I thought linked up really nicely. And then just striking, getting it into the goal. And I mean, Fulham fans have a lot to say about Thomas Frank, and I think he's not the most popular manager, obviously, because he managed our rivals forever. But it was quite nice in a Schadenfreude kind of way to see Frank, who was already under so much pressure going to this game, down at home within 7 minutes and the fans booing him and the goalkeeper. It did feel like we were onto something special last night.
And Harry Wilson, once again, the the nemesis of Thomas Frank, he just loves it. Oscar, I've actually put a tweet up today that I think has actually been more taken on by the Spurs community than the Fulham community. And actually, I'm talking about it as if I'm a Spurs fan, but I just can't get my loaf around. Right, obviously, Vicario makes a mistake here. Fine, like it's not great. Why doesn't he boot it into Rose? I don't really know. I guess generally you try and see all footballers, goalkeepers included, not try to keep some sort of possession, right? They're coached to do that, and he looks for a pass when probably the situation warranted a clearance. But, okay, fine. Vicario's made the mistake. What I still can't get around, I'm watching the replay of this now over and over again. It's on my phone. Danso's there. Porro's around. Vicario's so far out of his goal. Why doesn't one of them think, oh, maybe I should go on the goal line? I just can't. I still just can't understand what's going through their heads and thinking, yeah, no, there's no one in our net, but this will be fine. Let's just maintain the offside line. Just maybe make sure that someone's covering the goalkeeper.
I mean, they clearly don't know how great Harry is on his left foot.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly they haven't watched enough. I think one of the other things I think it's so strange about the goal is obviously it's a wonderful strike from Harry, and I don't want to take any credit away from that. But Vicario himself, he definitely had enough time to run back and get into goal before Wilson takes that shot, because he runs all the way and then he sort of hits it, and then Josh intercepts, but he's still got enough time to try and get back and just go. But I agree with him. It was just, it's some of the worst defending I've seen this season. But again, no complaints from my end. But what a strike from Wilson. And it was, obviously this weekend as well, Tyler Adams scored the longest range goal of the season with his screamer against Sunderland. And obviously Wilson's goal against Spurs, that's now the second longest range goal of the season. But I think what's more impressive about it is the angle that he scores, as you alluded to earlier, in terms of a sort of like, kind of like a sort of American football-esque sort of like shot from the side going long range. But look, terrible from Spurs. And Vicario, he didn't help himself. And I think Spurs fans feel aggrieved because they're defending, not just in the game against us, but the last few games they've been conceding goals. 4 against Arsenal, 5 against PSG, and Thomas Frank's got big problems. He's got to fix that defence as soon as possible, because you just can't see. As soon as the fans start booing the own players, it slightly feels like a sort of beginning of the end. But then I also think as well, it's so early into the season, and obviously under Ange, they had an absolute shocker last season. Obviously, the one in the Europa League, but domestically they were terrible. So I think Frank will have enough time to turn it around. But God, defensively, that goal was just. It was embarrassing, really embarrassing from a Spurs point of view.
Yeah, I just can't believe the lack of awareness from everyone. Maybe Vicario should have got back, but it's just comical, but like brilliant that Fulham benefited from it, Jack. And Oscar made the point there that Arsenal conceded 4, then 5 in the week to Arsenal and PSG. We should have scored more in that first half. I didn't realise in the ground how close that Chukwueze shot was. I thought it went wide. I didn't realise it hit the post. At the time, obviously Chukwueze rounded the goalkeeper. We had a couple of other openings as well in that first half. Genuinely, 2-0 wasn't enough at half-time to kind of to show or prove how dominant we were, particularly in the first half an hour. We're absolutely just flying. And it should have been 3 or 4.
Yeah, I couldn't quite believe what I was watching, just how dominant it was from our point of view. I should have maybe expected it slightly, just because Tottenham have been so poor this season, especially at home. But yeah, we really should have been 3 or 4-0 up going into the break. I think if Mickey van der Ven's not there, it's a different story, obviously, with the last-ditch challenge from Chukwueze. He took one from the grasp of Raul Jimenez as well in that first half as well. And then obviously the Chukwueze chance hitting the post. It was fantastic. As you mentioned, that opening 30 minutes, but the first half in general, I thought we were brilliant. And then you kind of going into the break 2-0 up. Can't quite believe that you're in that position, but also slightly frustrated that it's not more. And then obviously I'm sure we'll get into the second half now as it kind of got on, kind of wondering if those chances that we missed we were going to rue to regret.
Yeah, I wonder, Elizabeth, I actually think Sammy James should have done a bit better when I think rounding the goalkeeper was actually the wrong decision with Vicario, because I think there was an opportunity. Obviously it was an opportunity there. Look, I think there was on one hand, Chukwueze was so dangerous. Maybe a little bit of lack of composure, just a bit of match sharpness, maybe. I feel like Chukwueze maybe in 5-6 games time, when he's had a bit more of a run in the team, might be burying a couple of those chances, particularly the 1-on-1.
Yeah, he was unbelievable yesterday. I think it's really hard to overstate just how electric he was. And in the stands, after 15 minutes, we were turning around to each other and being like, who the hell have we signed? Like, what the hell has happened? Like, how's he ended up here? It was so exciting every time he got on the ball. And I think you say, he should have done better. And I don't know. I think the shot clipping the post was unlucky. I think.
Oh, not from that.
Three.
What could have been
but then
there?
The rounding the goalkeeper thing, it was a slightly heavy touch. And yeah, it felt like the right move in some ways. I don't know. And I don't really think that I've got it in my heart to say anything negative about Chukwueze's first half performance. I did think he tired a lot in the second half. Obviously, he's not necessarily up to full match fitness. He hasn't played a load of 90s. But the way that he was taking on players and the assist for the first goal is testament to that. The distance he travels in what should be an area where he's being closed down and Spurs players are trying to close him down and he's just skipping past them is unbelievable. I'm so excited for Tuesday night now to see him again in a Fulham shirt.
100%. Oscar, I think towards the end of the first half, we were really retreating and Spurs managed to kind of just like they were camped in our half, and that continued into the second half. I think my only critique last night was I felt like Spurs' goal was coming for 10, 12 minutes, and it seemed quite evident to me, and it felt like, the chatter around me in the stands at least, that why aren't we changing at least the midfield here? Why aren't we bringing on Sasha Luke? But effectively, the changes that Marco did make, I felt were the right calls, but just wonder actually in hindsight, if he'd have been a bit bolder, made those maybe even at half-time, which would have been quite a ludicrous thing to do to make such a defensive substitution at half-time, but certainly kind of 50, 52, 53 minutes. That was maybe the only thing last night, because I felt like Kudus' goal was sort of preventable if we just gave ourselves a bit more solidity, which is exactly what we did and eventually managed to see out the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think you make a really good point there. I think it's always important, especially in the second half, that Silva refreshes, he makes the right changes, that we get a little bit more energy in the midfield. And I think there has been a few times this season, and even during Silva's tenure, where you can say that I sometimes feel, and it's only a little criticism because, God, I absolutely love Marco Silva. Sometimes I feel like he does wait quite long to make the changes, especially at the time when we're struggling, when we're on the back foot. And we have always had a bit of a tendency that we're a little bit sluggish when we start the second half of games. And that's been notorious this season, and also particularly towards the back end of last season as well. But overall, I mean, I think on that point, of course, I think we needed a bit of a freshen up as well. But I thought that defensively, I think I will. Obviously, I think we're going to come on and mention Kenny Tete, but I actually want to give a mention to Andersen. I thought Andersen was absolutely fantastic last night. The number of clearances, and I think I actually would make a case that I think he's been Fulham's best defender so far this season. I think last season you could have. I know that's a bit of a bold thing to say. I think that Bassi last season was the standout, but I think at the start, and I think there's a little bit of criticism around Andersen. His performances weren't what we saw when we brought him on loan. But I think this season he's been absolutely brilliant. I don't know what he's eaten in the summer. I don't know what his training regime has been, but he's come back and he's looked like a real leader at the back. And I just wanted to give him his flowers because I thought last night he was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, generally defensively last night, Fulham were pretty solid. And Bassi and Andersen had a good understanding between each other, and obviously Kenny Tete was magnificent too. And when you think about the fact that we kept a clean sheet against Sunderland, it is nice. I am going into games now feeling like Fulham have found a bit of a solid base to build things off. So, Elizabeth, you're smiling and I can't quite work out what I've said.
Well, I was just thinking about how before the game I spoke with Dan, who we were sat with, and I was saying, the thing is, Fulham's backline we've got a mistake in us. And that's the issue. When I went to 2-1, I was like, like a fullback is going to do a sloppy pass. And I was saying before the game to Dan about how solid I thought Vicario was and what an excellent goalkeeper he was. And it proved to be the exact opposite for Fulham yesterday. Vicario was the one with the stinker in his back pocket.
Fair enough. Okay, for you, I was thinking did I completely contradict myself from something I said like a day ago or something like that, where I was like, oh, we should get by a whole new defence, basically. No, Jack, I just thought defensively last night, other than that period in which Kudus scored, look, there were a few moments, right? Raul cleared one off the line, that back heel from Kolo Muani. I actually think if he'd have put that on target, it wouldn't have gone in because I think Leno would have saved it, but it's still kind of heart in mouth. Kolo Muani also hit the side netting from a header. So I think it would be, I don't think it would be reasonable of us to say we gave Spurs absolutely nothing. They definitely did have some chances, but there was some heroic defending in there. And I think Oscar's right to praise Andersen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the, kind of performance that we needed on the road this season, given the fact, Villa away, we went 1-0 up and ended up losing. Same with Bournemouth. We conceded a late goal at Newcastle as well after getting back into the game. So I think it's the kind of performance that we needed, where you take the lead and then you maybe backs to the wall a little bit as the game kind of progresses, but you're able just to kind of dig in and see it out. And there were some heroics, obviously Jimenez clearing it off the line as well is a big one. But yeah, it was a fantastic defensive performance, to put that on top of the fact that we picked up 2 clean sheets in the last 4 as well is really positive. And it seems that we're kind of appearing to turn a corner in those side of things.
Yeah, 100%. And really held out well, Elizabeth, I think, for the rest of the game. Particularly for me, just that last 10 minutes and stoppage time. Felt like Kevin came on, made a good impact. I thought Smith Rowe was brilliant as well off the bench. Mostly defensively, really. I felt like Smith Rowe was excellent. And Timothy Castagna just gave us a bit of solidity, and that move obviously counteracted the fact that Spurs threw on an extra attacker, so we threw on kind of Castagna in order to mitigate against Tell, who I think was replaced for a doggy. That was the most impressive bit for me, because when that game went to 2-1, we all said there's no way this game ends 2-1. Maybe it's 3-1 Fulham, more likely it's 2-2, or maybe even 3-2 Spurs, because it really felt like they'd cranked up the pressure. And the way that we managed to wrestle back the control, sure, there were a couple of moments. We were a little bit shaky, I thought, from long throws and corners. It felt a little bit like, but actually, in the most part, we held on, and particularly stoppage time, masterclass. And that's what I remember us being really good at a few seasons ago, and that's obviously something that's been our downfall, particularly this season, is a bit of mentality, sometimes away from home, and just buckling under that pressure.
I disagree, actually. I thought we were quite solid from corners, weirdly. Like, I thought, even though we had the moment where Raul headed it off the line, aside from that, I thought Leno was incredibly commanding. And I thought generally Spurs didn't look like they were really threatening from those positions. And I agree with you that it was the first 15 minutes of the half where the panic was starting to rise, and like you could definitely feel it amongst the fans in the ground. And it felt like the game was slipping away. And I think when you're 2-0 up and you're putting in a commanding or even equal performance, you feel safe, you feel calmer. Whereas as soon as it went to 2-1, even though we got a bit more back in control, and Sasha Lukic and Emil Smith-Rowe really changed the game, and props to both of them. Lukic was sliding in on tackles as soon as he came on the pitch. He was really commanding in the centre of the park. And Smith-Rowe as well, doing a lot of defensive work. His work rate was really high yesterday, and I think in the past, I've certainly been very critical of Smith-Rowe and his work rate, but I saw yesterday like a team that was all pulling in the same direction, and Smith-Rowe was a huge part of that. When it goes 2-1, obviously you worry there's going to be a freak goal where something happens. But overall, in the last 15 minutes, we looked in control. We looked calm. We looked good. We looked like maybe if one team was more likely to score, it might even have been us. And while it would be revisionist of me to say I wasn't stressed at all, because I was in absolute bits in the stands and barely able to watch a lot of it, when the final whistle went, it felt very, very fair and very, very right that they hadn't managed to score more than one in the second half.
Yeah, Oscar, I definitely chalk it down as a deserved victory for Fulham. Like, sure, it's not the most like fun way to win a football match in lots of ways, like score twice early and effectively hang on, which is kind of what happened. Obviously, we should have put it out of sight, really, and this shouldn't have been an issue. But the fact that we didn't meant that the second half was incredibly stressful. I can't get over just like how much we needed that, because I think if you'd have added up, we'd obviously threw away leads against Villa and against Bournemouth, and we blew our equaliser up at Newcastle. I think if we'd have added throwing away a 2-goal lead at Spurs, a team that are beatable, I just wonder if fans would have really started to question this team and whether they've actually got the bottle, the mentality to actually pull out and dig out big results.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest with you, I think even before the Sunderland game, I think if you'd said to me that, Sunderland, Tottenham, and then Man City, how many points are we going to get out of that? I honestly thought we were only going to get maybe one. We'd be lucky to get one, basically, obviously considering how well Sunderland have started the season. But that was a huge result, I think, psychologically for the team as well, as you alluded to, and Jack as well, in terms of so many times this season we've been in the lead and we just haven't been able to hold on. Now, I think in the Bournemouth game, it was 2 moments of absolute brilliance from Semenyo and Cliver. And I think it's difficult for Fulham fans to say we played poorly. It was just wonder strikes. But to get one over the line against Tottenham, and actually, we've had a good record against Spurs. We haven't lost them in the last 4 games, even under when Ange Postecoglou was the manager. So I think it was huge, really, really huge for us to get the 3 points. Gives us a little bit of a cushion and gives us a real good factor back to the club heading into a match against Manchester City, which we don't have particularly fond memories of playing over the years, especially Pep Guardiola's side. But I think as well, I'm really happy for Silva as well in his 200th game, in a milestone match for Marco. I think it's a huge result, and obviously our first win in that ground as well, and against Spurs. And I know that Spurs have struggled, but they're still got a really good team, still got a good team out there. But I think for Fulham and for those group of players, it'll be huge, especially with the number of games coming up. And I think it was a really, really impressive performance. And as everyone said earlier as well, I mean, so many players we could highlight and talk about, but I thought the cohesiveness and the togetherness of the team, the aggression, and just the ability to see out the game was huge. And I hope that can now be a blueprint that we can try and carry on in these kind of difficult, gritty away games for the rest of the season.
And Jack, obviously, what's so satisfying is after a win like that, you look at the Premier League table and you look at how high Fulham went. We went from 15th to 15th in the league. That was a bit of an anticlimax. I was there on Saturday night, like, come on, we're going to be 7th. I was like, oh no, hang on, how are we still 5th? We've won twice in a row, we're still 15th. But I think you actually look at the table now, and obviously everyone's played their 13th game, and actually 4 points off 7th. Like Brighton are 5 points ahead of us in 5th. So I think now it's almost a bit like Fulham have entered the group chat. Like we're in this kind of mid-table, and actually you think about some teams who I think everyone would have said, oh, they've had a brilliant start to the season, likes of Bournemouth, likes of Palace. Brentford, everyone's talking about how great they've been. 2 or 3 points behind all of them. And suddenly Fulham are now actually in the conversation. And I don't think that we can say, oh, we're safe or anything like that. I think there's plenty of football left in this season. But it's nice that these 2 wins really can calm everyone down. Because if you think about that mood during the international break after that Everton game, I think we were all concerned. Like, I felt like, yeah, sure, I think we will stay up, but I was definitely worried that this could be a season where we're in a battle. And we still could be, in fairness.
Coming off the Everton game, I just was looking at the 3 fixtures coming up, Sunderland and Tottenham and City, just thinking, if we don't get something from this Sunderland game, it could get very nervy going into 2 pretty difficult fixtures. But we've managed to counteract that with 6 points out of a possible 6. And just we haven't moved ourselves up in the table, but as you mentioned, we've put ourselves into the conversation. It's that time of year where, there is just this massive cluster of teams that are all separated by a point or 2, and we've managed to put ourselves into that while also moving away from those below us. Obviously, all 5 losing on the weekend as well, which is always handy. It means as well that we go into this Manchester City game, who, they're not exactly in the greatest form away from home, and maybe we'll get into that. But it does mean that we get into that game which is in effect a free hit, not necessarily worried about what's going on underneath us.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we will take a break there. Afterwards, we'll look ahead to City and answer a few of your questions. Today's podcast is brought to you by My Kind of Cruise, the world's first cruise booking app and website. Black Friday might have been and gone. However, My Kind of Cruise's Black Friday is still on until December the 2nd. You can get some amazing savings on your next cruise. Wherever you want to go to in the world, My Kind of Cruise is the best comparison website where you can look through all the different cruise options around the world, no matter how you want to take your next voyage. You can go to mykindofcruise.com, use the code Fulhamish, or download their app from the Google Play or Apple App Store. And it's founded by a fellow Fulham fan. That's My Kind of Cruise. Use the code Fulhamish for an exclusive discount, and make sure you book by December the 2nd to take advantage of their Black Friday savings. It is part 2 of today's Fulhamish podcast with Elizabeth, Jack and Oscar. Let's look ahead briefly to Man City on Tuesday, a 7:30 kickoff at the Cottage. Feels like the first kind of midweek fixture in forever, apart from the cup games. And I mean, Jack, it's an interesting time to be facing Manchester City. I don't think you can go as far to say they're out of form, Like they've lost 2 of their last 7, right? But it does just feel like this Man City side are quite fallible. Even the result on Saturday against Leeds, they just about got the job done, but Leeds were by far the better team in the second half against them, and they were bailed out by Phil Foden's brilliant winner. It just, they've lost. They've been losing tough away games, right? They lost at Brighton, they lost at Villa, they lost at Newcastle. I'm not saying that Craven Cottage is quite at the same level as those home grounds. However, Fulham have been good at the Cottage this season. The run against City is obviously embarrassing. It's something like 16 or 17 losses in a row. Am I crazy for thinking that maybe this is the day or the night that we finally break this horrible run against Manchester City?
I wouldn't say that, to be fair. I think that there's certainly a case that Fulham can get a result in the week. This is a good time to play City. You know, last season was obviously a little bit of an anomaly, but they seem to start a little bit slower, and then as you kick on towards the back end of the season, they just seem to be unstoppable. So this is a great time for Fulham to play City at home. Normally it's the other way around, and we're with the reverse fixture is normally this time part before Christmas. So I think it's a good time for Fulham to play City, and as you mentioned, they're not in not necessarily the greatest of form, but away from home they have proven that they can be beaten. And you know, barring yesterday against Tottenham, we've been pretty poor away from home, and we're only 3 points behind them in terms of our away form. So, you know, it's not like they've necessarily been putting up trees on the road. So I think there's certainly a claim that Fulham can really take the game to City in the week and potentially get a result.
Elizabeth, one thing that just slightly worries me about this match is this kind of looming Erling Haaland milestone. I mean, he's going to break the record. It's just a matter of when. He's about to become the fastest ever player to score 100 Premier League goals. I think Alan Shearer did it in 128 games or something like that, and this is Haaland's 110th. So assuming that Haaland scores within the next 18 Premier League games, he will break this record. He didn't do it against Newcastle. He didn't do it against Leeds. So we just really need to hope that. I feel like we might be coming up against a bit of an angry Erling Haaland on Tuesday, who might just be desperate to break this milestone.
Yeah, unfortunately, he is definitely going to do it against us. When I saw that he didn't score on Saturday against Leeds, I thought, for God's sake, I can't be having this at the Cottage. I remember Harry Kane a few years ago, equalled Jimmy Greaves' Spurs record at the Cottage as well. And it always just feels like these records come up against us. I don't know. I mean, Pep City, good time to play them, all of that. But I've spent a lot of time watching Fulham v City, and I've never been a happy person because of it. So I'm going in with a little bit of trepidation to this one. But, you know, perhaps Haaland won't be able to score his 100th goal. I bet he'll score a hat-trick.
Yeah, I mean, the last time that we got any results against Manchester City, Oscar, 18th of September 2011, and that was a 2-2 draw. The last win against City all the way back in 2009. There's a website called 11v11.com, and I use it quite a lot for previews. It just quite nicely shows a clear summation of the head-to-head record between two teams. And this string of L's is just like, I've never seen anything quite like it. I think it may be, and I don't 100% know the stat behind this, I have a funny feeling that this is the longest sequence of consecutive wins against another opposition in the Premier League is City's record against Fulham. So I feel like Marco has broken many a duck. Could it be this one?
Yeah, I hope. I really, really hope that finally we can break the duck against City. And as Elizabeth alluded there, I think, God, the number of times I've watched us play City and Haaland has had a really poor game, but he just somehow finds a way to score against us, whether it's a sort of penalty or a sort of last minute jammy deflected shot. But surely at some stage that has to end. Surely the sequence of L's has to end. And as you're right, I think it's an interesting Manchester City team. I think, as you said earlier, there is a fragility about them, and there are some defensive concerns. And I just wonder, I feel like this will be a really good game for Chukwueze. I feel like this is the kind of game where he can get the ball, he can really start driving at the defence. I look at Mateus Nunes, their right back, and I think that Chukwueze on the left, and it's interesting that Marco plays him on the left when predominantly he always has played on the right when he was at AC Milan and Villarreal. But I feel like this could be a really good game for him to get his teeth into. But City is City, and they've got the players, they've got the know-how to get the job done. But I think, of course, beating Sunderland and beating Spurs will give that group of players confidence. And I just hope that they go into Tuesday night with a sort of a no fear factor. We've got nothing to lose. And obviously, because I think now, as you said as well, in terms of the relegation fears are ever so slightly eased after, 6 points in our last 2 games. This is a game that we can really, really, really go at them. And look, I'm hoping for a result. And I think that we could get something. I mean, if we got a draw, that would be an incredible result. But God, if we got the win, it would be absolutely brilliant. I'm buzzing for Tuesday night. It should be an absolute cracker.
Elizabeth, felt like you wanted to come in on this.
Yeah, I think if we get the win, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I assume Fulham will go into the top 10, which means we get to sound the horn, right?
Don't mention it.
To celebrate.
We'd all been thinking it.
I know the Pep Guardiola stat, which is that we are Pep's favourite opponents. He's got a couple of 100% records against team. For example, he's faced Watford 12 times and won 12 times, but we're the highest 100% record. So he's faced us 13 times and beat us 13 times. So yeah, it's not good. Maybe it will be 14 times he's faced us and 13 times he's won.
I'm kind of surprised he's played Watford that many times. I kind of forget how long they were in the Premier League during that stint. But I was like, surely Fulham have come up against City more than Watford. They haven't been in the Premier League in years. But no, okay, there we go. Let's break this one. This is the one. That and a win at Turf Moor and a win at Arsenal. I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, surely they're the kind of remaining curses that I can sort of think of. Either places that we haven't won. I mean, we need to do City home and away, I guess. But let's just focus on home for now, rather than the absolute utopia of somehow ever getting a win at the Etihad. There's one here that kind of I've got a question here from Jim that kind of nicely straddles the two sections because I was going to ask this question anyway. Jim says, do we go safe against City and bring back the Lukic-Berger axis or continue to push on with a more dynamic midfield? Jack, your thoughts on this one? Because it is really tempting to think surely he'll go and bring back in the Berger-Lukic. I don't think Iwobi was amazing on Saturday, but I thought he was fine, and I still really like the balance of him in the midfield. And whilst individually I don't think he pulled up too many trees, I do think that the dynamic that Iwobi brings and brought on Saturday is fantastic. So part of me is thinking, back ourselves. We're at home. It's working. But I would obviously understand if Marco retreated and thought, yeah, up against Foden and Doku and Gonzalez and Reinders and Bernardo Silva, maybe we might need Lukic and Berger in order to try and keep some sort of stability.
Yeah, I think you can certainly make an argument for both cases. I'd stick personally. I'd keep it as it is with Iwobi in the middle of the park. As you mentioned, he didn't necessarily pull up any trees against Tottenham, but I thought he was good enough, and it's a really nice dynamic between the pair of them. And we've talked about the fact that City on the road this season have been susceptible from to conceding and dropping points. So I think that Marco would be well within his right to stick with what was tried and tested against Tottenham, and really take the game to this City side. So I'm sticking.
Let's go round the houses on this. Oscar, are you sticking or are you twisting?
I'm sticking. I'm with Jack on this one. I think you have to. I think especially after the way in terms of it's the formation that has clicked for us this season. And as I said earlier, I think you can't. I mean, because normally we'd have Iwobi in the position that Chukwueze is, but I think as we've all said, how can you drop? Surely he can't drop Chukwueze after the way he's been playing recently. And as I say, I think we do need a few players, especially City will have all of the ball, but as soon as we counter, we need those players. We need the likes of the Kevins and the Chukwuezes to hit them on the break and try and counter and see what we can do moving forward. But yeah, I'd stick with the team. As much as I love the Berg-Lukic partnership, I think Silva should stick to his guns.
Elizabeth, are you making it a clean sweep?
Yeah, 3 for 3. We've had 3 wins in our last 8 games, and all 3 have used the same defensive midfielder plus Iwobi in the middle of the park. I just think like the Everton game will live long in my memory for not good reasons, and we created absolutely nothing that day. And if we are going to get something against Manchester City, we are going to have to create a bit. And I think Lukic and Berger has a place. I think Dan said this perfectly in the quick take. Lukic and Berger has a place when we are needing to stifle a game in the remaining half an hour. We do not have it in us. We do not have an elite enough and expensive enough squad to stifle Manchester City for 90 minutes. So we have to create.
Yeah, I agree. And also, like, I think it's the security blanket that these wins have given us now. I mean, maybe if you got like a point out of Sunderland and Spurs, or even a couple of points, and we're still like hovering around and we're right here, right, that we got to grudge this out. We've won 2 in a row. The confidence is there. I think that's what we've been afforded by winning a couple of games. Like, might as well just like have a bit of a go. And if you can get into a lead at half time, maybe then, you know, that would be the only thing. We talked about it in part 1, like make that Lukic change like when you need to. As soon as you can see the momentum swinging, bring on Lukic. Like, it is a weapon in our arsenal, and hopefully it's to protect a bit of a lead. Jim then asks this question, which is another one. I don't think the answer to this is yes, but he certainly makes a point. Emil Smith-Rowe ahead of King for Manchester City. Thought that Josh looked tired versus Spurs. Anyone a proponent of this? I'm not sure, Oscar. It's I'm really liking Smith-Rowe, and I think that he is going to break into the team at some point, potentially during AFCON, but it's just this whole thing of like, I know that there's a few games in a few days and we've got to keep legs fresh, but don't change a winning team, surely.
Yeah, I agree. And I love Josh King. I have to say, I'm such a, I think we all do, but obviously he's one of Fulham's own. And I think as well, you play King because I think one of he's got fantastic attributes. I think maybe the only criticism is you say sometimes in the final third could do a little bit better. But one thing he's really good at is taking the ball under pressure and making just quick little deft sideways passes. He's very good at getting out of trouble. And I think in a game against City, we do need players like that. We need players who are going to soak up the likes of a Ruben Dias and just win a cheap foul and just buy us a little bit of time. And I think that King is a little bit better at that. At Smith-Rowe. But, you know, I would like to see Smith-Rowe getting more game time. And as you say as well, it's important that we do keep the squad rotation ticking, especially with the sheer number of games that we've got over the Christmas period. But I think that I don't see any reason for Marco to drop Josh King for Tuesday.
Yeah. This one from Joe CB says, who was your man of the match yesterday? Mine was Andersen. Oscar, are you agreeing with Joe there? Obviously, Tete, a strong shout. He won the Fulham. It's the first time I've ever felt like the Fulham legend of the match actually justified the name. I was there going like, he actually was the legend of the match in this one. I'll have that. And Chukwueze got the official kind of Premier League man of the match. So there is a lot for debate there.
Yeah, well, I'm delighted that he's gone for Andersen. What a good man. That's great. But I think, yeah, I mean, look, I understand why Tete got it, and obviously Sky choosing Chukwueze. But look, as I said earlier, delighted for Andersen. He should deserve the praise. I think, you know, as much as I think in these sort of situations, we always look at how well players have gone going forward, and always the forwards a lot of the time get a lot of these accolades. But as I said, I mean, Tete Kenny was absolutely brilliant. Not just the goal he scored, but his all-round gameplay was superb. But Andersen was superb. I think he made the most number of clearances and the most number of blocks in the entire 90 minutes last night. So, yeah, for me, I completely agree. It's got to be Andersen.
Elizabeth, who was your nod for legend of the match?
Tete is like every day. He was unbelievable yesterday. Sort of a game that made me think, I'm so grateful we didn't sell him to Everton in the summer. He was everywhere, and even towards the end of the match there was a moment in like 90+2 where actually Spurs, as their threats were starting to quieten down, but it definitely didn't feel that. The tension in the away end was so high, where he just made this incredible tackle and he kept up that work rate throughout. Yeah, I haven't seen a performance like it in a long time, and I would say it was similar to that performance a few years ago against Chelsea, where he just had basically the whole team in his pocket, and it was unbelievable. And that was yesterday for me with Tete. I was so impressed.
Jack, Tete, Andersen, Chukwueze?
I'm going to side with Liz and go that
unless you've got a fourth.
Yeah, my legend of the match, alongside Liz, I'm going to go with Kenny Tete.
Yeah. I think there was something about it as well in the stands yesterday. He just, I love his connection, he just seems to get it. He just seems to get Fulham, and also just seems to. He's been putting these performances in for years. There's just been no regression from Kenny Tete. It just seems to be kind of ageless. And if he only could just stay fit for 38 matches a season, I just sometimes wonder what we could achieve if we didn't need to generally do without Kenny Tete for at least 50% of the season. There's this one from John Brooker. How might we give Raul a rest? And also another question that says, how many Red Bulls can we get down Raul on Tuesday afternoon? Obviously, he's being asked to do one hell of a shift, Jack. I kind of just think we're going to have to run him into the ground. It feels like a car on 150,000 miles, and it's just like, sorry, mate, you got to do another 500 tomorrow. There's not much we can do. You're just going to have to make it, mate.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think there is any other way you can get around it, to be fair. And I think that's the testament to Raul himself, just the performances that he is continuing to put in while also running on empty. Just the way he was so bullish last night, just bullying defenders, dragging them out, creating space for other players. I thought Jimenez was fantastic, and obviously we all know that Silva doesn't fancy Kusi Asare at all, and with Moon out for the foreseeable, it doesn't look like Raul's going to get his rest anytime soon.
No, it doesn't. I like this one. There's a bit more of a debatey question from Sam, talking about the AFCON period. He says, what's the middle three going to be during AFCON? How do we maintain the attacking thrust we get from Iwobi in the middle during this period? Obviously, we're going to be losing Chukwueze, Bassi and Iwobi. But I guess in the case of Chukwueze and Bassi, there are kind of just ready-made replacements. It'll be Jorge Cuenca, won't it, for Bassi? And with Chukwueze, I guess there's a number of options. Obviously, we've got Kevin on the left wing, and maybe I thought about by then you might just have Anthony Robinson. They're talking about him potentially being back mid-December, so maybe you've got Anthony Robinson back at left back, which might free up Cesc to go left wing as well. However, Elizabeth, I guess the question is, what do you do? Because this Iwobi midfield partnership is working, and it just feels like at the moment we've just found out what our midfield should look like, we're going to get it ripped away from us. And I think that the first game that the AFCON boys can't play is West Ham on the 27th of December. Obviously, I mean, I'm all for Nigeria doing well, but at the same time, we could do with all of them back. One thing is obviously we might just regress to this Berger Lukic midfield, but I have been wondering, with Emil Smith-Rowe putting in strong performances, are we potentially looking at a solution, particularly for games where we're expected maybe to be a bit more dominant? Josh King drops back, and Emil Smith-Rowe goes to number 10, with obviously Berger or Lukic, one of them still being the kind of defensive shield.
Yeah, I'm worried about losing Alex Iwobi big time. I think Cuenca's a really solid player, and I think that Kevin and our other left winger options. Maybe Cesc will come forward in front of Robinson. Not sure, but something like that. I think that'll be fine. Iwobi's the one that really concerns me because I feel like this is clicking. It's hard. I think Marco will do a lot of Lukic Berger, and I think we will suffer because of it. That feels like the sensible option. Those are the players that actually play in that position, and King, for all his strengths, doesn't necessarily have the grind. Or he's very hardworking, so I don't mean that, but he doesn't have the grittiness sometimes to his play that I feel like Iwobi, Berger and Lukic do. I mean, I guess in those quote-unquote easy home games, we should be starting King alongside Berger with Emil Smith-Rowe in the 10. But I mean, short of a return from Harrison Reed, I kind of feel like this is a circle that I can't square at the moment.
Yeah. And we might just also, Oscar, have to wait until we're a bit closer to work out who's fit, who's available. There's going to be a lot of games between now and then. But yeah, your thoughts on this? Because it's obviously, it's coming around the corner pretty quickly. It's less than a month until we do lose all three of them.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm quite worried that AFCON is coming at quite a bad time, especially when Chukwueze is just finding his feet as well and doing so well for us. But I think obviously Silver alluded to her in his press conference. I mean, I'm hoping. I think, as you said, having Robinson back will be huge, absolutely huge. It can push Sessegnon a little bit further forward and free him up. And I think one of the great qualities about Sess is you can stick him on the left, but you can also play him on the right as well. He's a very good utility man across all the sort of attacking areas. But I even wonder, obviously depending how far Nigeria go, if we just get off in the transfer market quickly in January and just try and look for Spurs. I know I say that with a pinch of salt because we did not entirely do that in the summer, and I was slightly tearing my hair out over that. But I wonder if maybe they've already got a plan. If Silver and the board and the sporting director already know what they want to do, because they know that they're going to lose those players for AFCON. So I hope that they've got a plan in place to think, right, we need to bring this player in. We need Raul, certainly. I mean, we certainly need a striker, that's for sure, because as Jack said, he clearly does not rate Kusi Asare, which I find a little bit strange, actually. I mean, he's only 18 years old, and I did watch him miss a penalty against Wickham, which was, sad for him. But I hope that they've got a plan. But I do think that we have got, as you said, we've got Kevin, we've got players who can come in there and do a job. But what I would love to see and what I would hope to see is that when the January window comes round, early doors, we make a few signings and we can just try and implement them in as quickly as we can.
Yeah. All right, that will do for the podcast today. We'll be back, myself and Jack, and I think George, on Wednesday, looking back at the Manchester City match. I may have to pack the horn. I may not have to pack the horn. Who knows? As Elizabeth said, the rules of the foghorn are 3 wins in a row and Fulham in the top 10. It just hasn't happened. I think since we won 4 in a row in Marco's first season, I think is the only time in the Premier League that we've that the old sound the horn tradition has actually been able to happen. So anyway, we've jinxed it anyway, and we're playing Manchester City and we have no chance. So it's not going to be happening anyway, but it might. And obviously, do check out everything on the Fulhamish website. Plenty of reaction to the Spurs game, and also, of course, there'll be plenty of reaction to the City game as well. Oscar, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Jack, thank you.
Cheers, thanks for having me, mate.
And Elizabeth, thank you.
Thank you for having me. Viva Spurs away.
Hey, have a great start to your week. I'm sure you will. Safe in the memories of what was a brilliant weekend for Fulham. Let's hope we can go again and make history against City on Tuesday. You Whites.
You Whites.